You found the next chapter of The Iron Rebel, a military sci-fi saga of war, exile, and political deception. If that sounds like your kind of story, hit subscribe and give this video a like. It helps the story reach new rebels like you. Chapter 9. The Aftermath of Victory. In the opulent chambers of the Grand Council on Velora Prime, Senators Ardin Vale and Seris Tal convened in private to discuss the next phase of their plan. The room was bathed in the amber glow of holographic projections, depicting charts, maps, and the latest updates on unrest across the Confederation. Though their victory over Marcius Kane had been decisive, both knew that their true work had only just begun. Vale, ever the strategist, paced deliberately, his sharp features etched with thought. Marcius Kane was a symbol, he said, his voice measured but firm.
By removing him, we've made our intentions clear. No one is above the will of this council.
But symbols are resilient. If we don't act decisively now, his exile might become a rallying point for dissent. Tal, seated with one leg crossed over the other, regarded him with a calculating gaze. Her fiery speeches and sharp rhetoric had swayed many a senator to their cause, but it was her ability to adapt that truly made her formidable. "The outer rings are already stirring," she said, her voice low but urgent. "The reports are troubling. Protests, strikes, whispers of rebellion. They're calling for reform, for aid, for leadership. What they fail to understand is that leadership requires discipline. We can't allow these malcontents to dictate policy." Vale stopped pacing and turned to face her, his grey eyes gleaming with determination. "Discipline is precisely what we must enforce. These protests are nothing more than embers, easily extinguished if we act swiftly. I'll propose a resolution tomorrow to increase patrols in the outer rings and authorize harsher penalties for dissent." Tal's lips curved into a faint smile. "You've always been good at the stick, Ardin. But we can't forget the carrot. There are moderates in the council who are growing uneasy. They supported us against Kane, but they're starting to question our methods. We need their loyalty if we're to hold the majority." Vale's expression darkened.
Weak-willed opportunists. They'll bend if the alternative is chaos.
"Perhaps," Tal said, her tone thoughtful. "But fear alone won't hold this confederation together. We'll need to make concessions, or at least appear to. A few well-publicized infrastructure projects, maybe a relief package for one of the border systems. Enough to placate the moderates and silence the outer rings, for now." Vale frowned but nodded.
"Very well.
You're right. The illusion of compromise can be as effective as the reality. But we must not lose sight of the bigger picture. The Confederation is fragile, and fragility invites collapse." Tal rose from her seat and walked to the holographic display, her auburn hair catching the light. She gestured to a map of the Confederation's territories, its once solid borders now dotted with hotspots of unrest. "We can't just suppress rebellion. We need to reshape this Confederation into something stronger, something unbreakable. Marcius Kane's downfall was the first step. Now we mold the future." Vale joined her at the display, his voice low but resolute. "Then let's ensure the foundations are built to last. No half measures, no hesitation. We've come too far to falter now." The following months saw the swift passage of several controversial measures spearheaded by Vale and Tal. Under the guise of preserving order, the Council enacted the Public Security and Unity Act, a sweeping policy granting unprecedented powers to military governors and law enforcement in troubled systems. Patrols in the outer rings were tripled, and new curfews were imposed, and enforced with ruthless efficiency. Anyone caught spreading anti-government sentiment faced immediate detention without trial, a provision that drew sharp criticism from moderates, but was reluctantly accepted by a majority eager to avoid further chaos. Vale's resolution to centralize resource distribution was equally divisive. By reallocating vital supplies to core worlds, the Council claimed to be ensuring stability where it was most needed. In practice, however, this left border systems and the outer rings to fend for themselves, exacerbating the very unrest Vale sought to suppress. Protests swelled as citizens accused the government of hoarding resources and abandoning those who needed them most. Tal played her part masterfully, presenting these measures as necessary sacrifices in public addresses. Her impassioned speeches framed the policies as acts of courage in the face of adversity, casting dissenters as reckless elements undermining the Confederation's survival.
Leadership, she declared to a packed council chamber, requires us to make hard choices. Choices that may not be popular, but are essential for the greater good.
Despite her rhetoric, cracks began to form in their coalition. Moderate senators who had supported the removal of Marcius Kane grew uneasy, their initial confidence eroded by the harshness of the new regime. Some quietly voiced their concerns in private gatherings, but few dared to challenge Vale and Tal openly, fearing reprisal or irrelevance. On Velora Prime, dissatisfaction simmered just beneath the surface, particularly in the outer rings and border systems. News of mass arrests and crackdowns spread like wildfire, carried on the whispers of underground networks. Hollow images of protesters clashing with heavily armed patrols flooded the media streams, further alienating the populace. In the outer rings, protests evolved into organized resistance. Makeshift barricades appeared in the streets of mining colonies and agricultural hubs. Local leaders, emboldened by their people's desperation, began coordinating strikes and boycotts. "We will not be silenced," one rebel leader declared in a covert transmission. "We are not pawns to be sacrificed for the comfort of Velora Prime." The Central Worlds, though quieter, were not immune to the unrest. Intellectuals, artists, and even some business magnates began questioning the moral cost of the Council's policies. Editorials critical of Vale and Tal appeared in prominent publications, thinly veiled behind calls for reflective leadership. Though these dissenters stopped short of outright rebellion, their voices added to the growing unease. Within the council itself, tensions rose. Tullis Greve, one of the few vocal moderates, warned against pushing the populace too far. "A government that rules through fear," he argued in a heated debate, "is a government destined to fall." The Confederation was built on unity, not oppression. We stray from that foundation at our peril. Vale dismissed these warnings with a wave of his hand. "Unity requires strength," he countered. "And strength sometimes demands difficult decisions. If we falter now, we risk losing everything." Tal, ever the pragmatist, sought to reassure the wavering moderates. "Our measures are temporary," she insisted. "Once the unrest is contained, we can ease restrictions and restore normalcy. But for now, we must remain resolute." Despite their confidence, the seeds of dissent had been sown. The Confederation, once a beacon of unity, teetered on the edge of collapse, its citizens divided and its leaders consumed by their own ambitions. For Vale and Tal, the path forward seemed clear, but they failed to see the storm gathering on the horizon. This chapter of the Iron Rebel comes to a close, but the war is far from over. If the story spoke to you, leave a like. It fuels the rebellion. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. New episodes drop every week. Until next time, stay sharp, stay defiant.
Hihikuma.